Radio 97, it's time to talk all things law, Jess.
Sure is, and Priala Legal is part of a boutique law firm specialising in property law, and the principal, Despina Priala, is our resident Radio 97 lawyer, joining us to talk about the latest hot topics and share general advice every Thursday, providing us with her legal expertise in matters relating to essential estate planning, wills, residential conveyancing and more. And we welcome her now. Good morning, Despina.
Good morning, Jess. Good morning, Wayne.
Morning, Despina. Yes, as usual, a couple of very interesting topics to cover, and we probably should get into it because there's so much that we need to look at. Let's firstly have a look at this federal home builder grant. Now, it has been extended, but there are a few changes. Can we have a look at this for anyone who's thinking about building a new home?
Yeah, absolutely. So it is a federal grant, so let's be clear about that straight up. So it's not a state by state. It does apply to all states around Australia, as I understand. So it is a federal grant. Now, it's been in place this year for the better part of the last 6 months. So there are some qualifications and qualifying eligibility issues you need to get past to be able to obtain this grant. So for all of this year, we have known that one of the qualifiers is you've got to have a contract, and a relevant eligible contract signed between the 4th of June and the 31st of December. So we are now obviously still in December, and that was good. And people were rushing the last few weeks knowing that it was going to end on the 31st of December because you needed to have a contract in place before then. So as we anticipated, and lots of lawyers have anticipated this, and I have, that the government has actually extended that. So now what they're saying is that we will extend the time frame to enter into a relevant contract for those eligible home owners, people who are wanting to buy homes who are eligible for the grant. So the government has now extended that to the 31st of March next year.
Great news.
So it is great news, but there is one difference with it. So the grant is $25,000. If you are eligible, you can obtain $25,000, which is great towards the purchase of your new home or build. But the qualification here is that after the 1st of January, the amount is being reduced to $15,000. So it's important for listeners to understand that whilst the pressure may be a little bit off in running around and getting a contract signed, that's a relevant contract so you can qualify to get the grant, that's all good, but it is extended, so the pressure's off a little bit, but
Not as much money.
Exactly.
Yes.
We're dropping from $25,000 to $15,000. It is a cut. So the government's recognised, Morrison government, that we have, that look, it's been a great stimulus in terms of construction of homes and the building industry. Wonderful. And we want to encourage that even more. So they're extending it the 3 months, but the grant amount is being reduced. And I suspect after the 31st of March, there won't be any further extensions. Could be wrong, but that's my gut feel on it.
Might help people to hustle though, if you know you're set to lose some money.
That's exactly right. The second big difference, which is perhaps more the critical part, is that the other big qualifier was that once you had signed a relevant contract, then the construction of that home had to commence within 3 months of the date of that relevant contract. So now they've extended that to 6 months, which is great news because we act for a lot of buyers who have gone under contract, and there's a lot of pressure on the developer builder to make sure they commence construction within that 3 month time frame. So now they've extended it to 6 months, which is great, and it is backdated. So what that means is if you are thinking, oh, does it apply to me, or is it only if I sign a contract after the 1st of January that I get the 6 months? No, it's actually backdated. So if you have a contract now that you've already signed that's a relevant contract and you've been advised that you are eligible for the grant, the 6 months applies to you from the date of your contract.
That's good news too then.
Well, you can understand, obviously, with there's been quite a deal of interest in this grant, and with everyone all trying to apply for it together, and you can understand there's a lot of pressure to get things done within 3 months. That's a fairly short time frame.
Very short time frame, and you had to actually lodge the application before the end of the year too, or by the 31st. That was the deadline. They've actually extended that to the 14th of April. So whilst the construction may not be completed, naturally you still have to lodge the application, tick all the boxes, and now they've extended that to the 14th of April, naturally with these other extensions that they've granted, that's going to be in place. So that's an important thing for listeners to know.
And also with eligibility, are you a couple, a single? How does that work?
I thought we'd talk about that as well, because these are some of the, I call it the fine print information that perhaps people may not be aware of, thinking, I'm going to get a new home built, I qualify. Well, no, there's always the fine print. You've always got to go through and read the terms and conditions, the T's and C's, as they call it now, abbreviated. But you need to go onto the government website, treasury.gov.au, and have a look at yourself, because there's financial eligibility. You have to earn a particular amount of income as a single and a couple. So you need to look at that for yourself. But the other important aspects are that you have to be an Australian citizen. Oh, yes. So if you are not an Australian citizen, you will not qualify. And we need to talk about individuals buying and couples buying, because those are the examples given on the website.
Because, of course, in a couple, you're not both necessarily Australian citizens.
That's right. So if you're buying as an individual, you're obviously only dealing with yourself, your own eligibility criteria. So you have to be an Australian citizen. If you are buying together with someone else and you're a couple, or you're identified as a couple, if the other person is not an Australian citizen, for example, New Zealand citizen, and we act for a lot of New Zealand citizens, so we're familiar with that, then because one person is Australian citizen and the other person is not, and they're a New Zealand citizen, for example, they actually won't qualify for the grant. So if you're buying as a couple, both of you have to qualify. Right? So naturally, if you're both New Zealand citizens, you won't qualify. If one's an Australian citizen, one's a New Zealand citizen, you won't qualify. The other interesting aspect that perhaps people may not think about is, well, if you're not a couple, what does that mean if you are a couple, not a couple? So I guess we could take the generic definition of a couple: married, de facto, same sex. So the specific example, though, given on the website is if two brothers want to build a new home, are they eligible? So the example, I've taken it straight from the Treasury website, it says that they're not eligible because two brothers cannot be considered as a couple. So it's really, really important. And remember, this is about the stimulus of the construction and building industry for home owners. So if two brothers are doing this and wanting to build a home, the government, I presume, in their infinite wisdom, would have thought, well, generally they're not buying as a homeowner, are they? They're not going to live together. We're talking about individuals or couples living together as homeowners and occupiers. So right or wrong, that's what is given on the website, and people need to be aware of that.
It's interesting, isn't it?
No, because you want to get ahead, and two brothers may see it as an investment.
I know.
And there would also be examples where brothers live together. Family members who are not married live together, live in the same house.
Absolutely. So whilst it has that example, if a couple, I should say two brothers, came to me and said, well, we want to have a home built and we're going to live in it because that's our intention. We're pooling our money together and we're going to live in it for a few years and then we might sell it. Sure, we may make money, we may not. Do we qualify? Now, the initial discussion will be, well, no. However, let's give it a go. Why not? You never know until you try. So I'm not saying that they would ever receive the grant under the current rules, but if you make an application and you explain to the government, well, they may not be a quote-unquote couple, but they are building a home to live in it as a home owner and occupier for a period of time, then they should qualify. You may as well put the argument forward. You can only get rejected or get accepted.
So it's
You
worth
don't
a go.
ask, you don't get.
It's
Exactly,
true.
exactly.
It's true.
So that's what I would do if someone came to me. But it's important for people to be aware that it's not to favour the investors. You know, this is what the grant's about. It's about homeowners and home occupiers, and I do understand that to a certain degree, but you never know. There could be some exceptions.
Because they're affected just as much as anyone else if they were choosing to live in the home. Like, why should they miss out? Because they're going through COVID as well and tougher times.
Well, that's right. But of course, the government has been on the other end and experienced people who have sworn declarations to say, well, this is our intention, just to get a grant, for example, or a reduced amount of stamp duty, for example, and then they do the exact opposite. So, and the money's gone.
Right.
So the money's gone to that particular person or persons as opposed to going to someone else that actually does qualify. So, yeah.
One ruins it for everyone else.
That's true. This is Talking Law on Radio 97 with Despina Priala. If you have a question for Despina, we'd be happy to pass it on your behalf. Just send the question to us at breakfast at radio97.com.au, and Despina will be happy to take that question for you and give you as much information as she can. Coming up after the break, we're going to talk about a test case. Now, there's obviously been some issues over the past 9 months with the COVID-19 interrupting businesses, and businesses have had to close and put off staff, etc. Well, there's an interesting question regarding insurance around business interruption and around the COVID issue. We'll talk about that after the break.